Unfortunately, I've seen people make financial planning mistakes that later come back to bite them and end up costing them hundreds of thousands of dollars. I don't want to see that happen to anybody. So in today's video, I'm going to share with you the top 4 things that I've seen that people forget about in their financial plans. And the first one is thinking about if you were to pass away, who would inherit your IRA or your 401k, because your IRA and your 401k, those pass by what's called by contract, as opposed to passing by your will or your trust. So regardless of what you have in your will, it matters who your beneficiary designation is for your IRA, and that is what is likely going to supersede anything that's in your will. Now, I'm not an attorney. I was a financial planner for over 20 years, and I just want to put these things on your radar screen. But if you have an IRA, if you have a 401k, it's really important that you know who the current beneficiary is. I have seen ex-spouses, there's been a divorce. I've seen ex-spouses still on beneficiaries when somebody came to me as a new client. And that's obviously one of the first things that we want to change, because we want it to go to whoever you want it to go to. Okay, the next one, and this can create a big mess, and unfortunately it's becoming much more common now. Really in the last 3 years it's become much more common than it was ever before. And that is, does your family have a way to access your passwords if you were to be hit by a bus? Your online passwords for your bank, your password for your phone, your password for your photos, both important documents as well as memories and keepsakes, digital keepsakes that you'd want them to be able to access. So it's super important that you have a way to share that. As far as your phone, if you have an iPhone or an Android, just very quickly, I will share with you some of the things. So for Apple devices, you want to look for how to add what Apple calls a legacy contact for your Apple account. And for your phone, you want to go to your settings, super easy to do. Then you tap your name, and then you sign in and you use your password, and you tap on Legacy Contact. And from there, you can add a legacy contact. And I believe you can have up to 3 legacy contacts. Now, whoever contacts Apple first can do whatever they want with that account, including deleting it. So make sure anybody that you give access to, you're okay if they make the decision to delete. And then there is a period of time that people can have access to your account. You can also do that on a Mac. You can see here what the process looks like. Just pause the video. If you're on an Android phone, a Google device, what you want to look for is Inactive Account Manager. And there, Google will say, plan on what happens to your data if you can't use your Google account anymore. And just look for Inactive Account Manager, and you can figure out how to share access to that account if you were to be hit by a bus. Now, the other thing, as far as sharing your passwords, we are now at a place in time where I think all of us need to have a password manager. And most password managers have a way for you to have a second or a third person that can access your account. But first, they're going to send me an email and say, hey, Azul, do you want to continue to give this person access to your account? And if I do not reply within a certain period of time, then the default is that person does get access to my account, so they can access my passwords. Okay, so enough on that for our digital life. That's an important piece of things. Now, there's the last 2 that I'm going to share with you after this one are the ones that really bite people and can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, so be sure to stick with me. I am going to talk about something called a donor-advised fund. Again, this is just something to put on your radar screen. It can be a very tax-efficient way to give to charities. A donor-advised fund and services like Schwab and Fidelity, and I believe Vanguard offer them. But if you have one of those, it's important to name a contingent advisor for that. So my wife and I have one, and our kids are listed as the contingent advisor. So if something were to happen to my wife and I, that money, my kids could still direct it to not-for-profit causes that they care about. If we don't name a contingent advisor, then in my case, Schwab or Fidelity would then be able to assign it however their team wants to assign it. And I want my kids to be able to do that. Okay, the next two are ones that can really bite you. And one is just realizing that there is a $330,000 expense that many, many financial plans overlook. And that is the expense that a 65-year-old couple is looking at once they reach 65 for the rest of their lifetime, their medical expenses, even once Medicare kicks in. So even with Medicare, a lot of people think, all I got to do is get to Medicare, and then I don't have to put in that much money in my budget. Unfortunately, that's not true for medical costs. Fidelity says that the average couple, 65-year-old couple, should budget $330,000 for expenses that they're going to have to pay in addition to what Medicare pays. And that's why I'm glad to partner with Chapter in today's video. Chapter is a Medicare advisor that helps people make good decisions regarding their Medicare. Their services are free to customers. I want to read for you a recent comment that I got on my video. One of my viewers that reached out to Chapter, and I want to read this to you because I think it's important because you want to deal with somebody that's going to give you the best advice for you and not be a car salesman and try to sell you whatever is going to make the most money in commission for them. So this is what one of my viewers said. Chapter, pleasantly surprised. I called thinking they would just try to push hard on some Advantage plan. That's Medicare Part C. The guy did not. He actually said that original Medicare and a supplement were the best choices. Not sure how Chapter makes any money off of that advice, but their street cred sure goes up with me because he didn't get the expected car salesman pitch. Again, some Medicare advisors are high pressure in pushing Medicare Advantage plans. For many advisors, that's what pays the most. You want somebody that's going to give you advice that's best for you, and that's why I want to thank my sponsor for today's video, Chapter, for providing truly unbiased Medicare advice. They're not going to tout the amazing benefits of Medicare Advantage and try to convince you into that plan. Instead, they'll take the time to explain the pros and cons of all of your Medicare options, including original Medicare, Medicare supplements, and Medicare Advantage and Part D. My experience is that these guys won't push you to buy a plan that you don't want, and that their support, I just want to remind you, is completely free to you. So if you're turning 65 or you're already on Medicare, but you're unsure of your plan, call them up. You can reach them at this number here or this link over here, whichever's most convenient for you. Okay, I told you I was going to talk about the two mistakes that people make that cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars. One of them was what we just talked about, the $330,000 expense. You need to be aware of that, and you need to make good decisions regarding Medicare. Again, that's why I partnered with Chapter. Again, reach them here. The other one has to do with your stocks and what to do with your stocks as you're approaching your end of life. And it's important that you know there's something called step up in basis. And again, this is to put things on your radar screen. I'm not an attorney. I'm not an accountant. But when people pass away, let's say you bought a stock for $10 and that stock's now worth $100 and you bought it 5 years ago. If you were to sell that, you'd have to pay long-term capital gains tax on the difference between what you bought it for and the current market price when you sold it, which in this example would be $90. But if you wait until after you pass, your heirs will get a step up in basis on those shares. And the mistake I see some people make is they want to make it easy for their heirs and say, oh, it'll be easier for me to just call up the custodian, somebody like Schwab or Fidelity, and tell them to sell the stock. So then I've got cash. that my kids will just inherit my cash. But that can be a very costly mistake. So talk to your accountant or look up for yourself, step up in basis on stock. The other thing is to have a financial plan that you can look through this. And the gold standard is to work with a financial advisor. I know many of you are not going to work with a financial advisor to create a plan for you because, frankly, financial advisors are about 1% a year. Mea culpa, I'm biased. I was a financial advisor for over 20 years. I think it's well worth that money. Just ask yourself, what's a 10% mistake going to cost you? And a 10% mistake would pay to have a financial advisor by your side for 10 years. So it's definitely worth thinking about. But if you're not going to use a financial advisor, if you want to do it yourself, don't use Excel. Don't use Google Sheets. Instead, use software that's designed for you so you don't have formula mistakes, you don't forget things, you don't forget expenses like that $330,000 expense for healthcare expenses. The software that I like is called Bolden. It used to be called New Retirement. You can find them here. Also, I want to encourage you to sign up for my newsletter. You can sign up for my newsletter over here. And if you like this video, the YouTube algorithm says this is the next video of mine specifically for you that you should watch next. Thanks for watching this one. Bye-bye.